Are you tired of Windows slowing down your gaming experience with endless bloatware and sluggish performance? Thinking of giving up and just switching to Linux? Well, Microsoft has messed it all up, but also fixed it? Today we put every custom and streamlined version of Windows head to head to find the ultimate OS for gaming. From Atom OS to Tiny 11, let's see if Windows can still put up a fight with Linux, if you can double your FPS with custom builds, and if I end up getting a virus. So what are these custom and streamlined versions of Windows? Well, Microsoft, in a bit to make more and more money, has basically crammed a bunch of spyware in your computer. Seth and Adele is literally out here taking notes like, oh, this guy's watching my man. But listen, button your privacy, okay? I'm not one of these, oh my god, they're spying on me, they're gonna leak my DMs. I don't care. But what I do care about is if I lag in Fortnite. Look, spy on me, make money off of me, sell me things. I don't care, but don't you dare drop my FPS. If I get 46 FPS instead of 45.5, I want it. What these custom builds do is strip away all this telemetry shit and all the other stupid processes and make your OS as lean as possible. This should in theory drop down your RAM usage, reduce your CPU loads, half-ass your computer boots, and yeah, a bit more FPS. And by bit, sometimes I mean double. So let's find out which build is the fastest. This video is sponsored by Flexispot. Look, I know what it's like spending hours away sitting at your desk coding or editing. But you shouldn't really be spending that much time sitting. You may not realize it, but sitting for that long every day increases your risk for all kinds of health problems like cardiovascular disease or even diabetes. Which is why I love standing desks like the E7 Pro. With its adjustable height, you can keep switching between standing and sitting while locked in on your work. Links in the description for a special one-time offer. And keep watching to find out more. So let's take a deeper dive into each contender. Atom OS is apparently designed for maximum performance, low latency, and minimal background usage. Many services are disabled like Windows Update, Telemetry, Cortana, Defender. Wait, you probably shouldn't disable Defender. Who's gonna defend? Apparently it boots in using less than 800 megs of RAM, and it is optimized for maximum FPS. We'll see about that. Windows 10 LTSC is the long-term service channel version of Windows 10. Regular Windows 10 is dropping support in October 2025, but this version of Windows will be supported until 2027. It's actually geared toward ATM kiosks and stuff, but because it needs to run on such shit hardware, it's actually quite lightweight. Also, Microsoft only really sells it through volume licensing, aka businesses only. Windows 11 LTSC, as you can guess, is the next version of Windows 10 LTSC. Basically all the same caveats apply, making it really lightweight, except we have brand new features included like a TPM requirement. But on the other hand, because it's newer, it will last much longer than Windows 10 LTSC. Now, Atlas OS is actually a script that debloats your Windows 11 install. It basically removes all the telemetry shit, removes a bunch of bloatware, optimizes power and CPU settings to give you every last bit of performance, supposedly. Now, Revy OS is a modified Windows 11 build, which again takes out a lot of the telemetry and bloatware stuff to give you maximum performance. Although I don't think it's specifically built for gamers, in theory it should boost your FPS. Windows X Lite, or 10 Lite, or whatever, is again debloated, but to the point where there isn't even an app store or a browser or nothing. At this point, you might as well strip away the operating system and just let the computer chill. But it'll supposedly run on the most low-end PCs, and it can boot in under 700 megs of RAM, which is impressive. Now, Tiny 10 was specifically built for low-end hardware, so they cut down on bloat like their life depended on it. Because they kinda did. I think this is one of the most popular custom builds of Windows because it's honestly hella useful. Tiny 11, like the name suggests, is a similar story. It is a little bit more useful than Tiny 10, has a bit more stuff, but it's still hella light. In theory, it should severely boost our FPS. Now onto the test environment. To ensure accurate and fair testing, each custom OS was freshly installed on identical hardware. An Intel Core i7-4960X CPU, an AMD Radeon 6700 XT GPU, and 16 gigs of RAM. Yeah, I know it and all that, but A, I'm broke. B, we're trying to test affordable hardware, not your freaking RTX 5090 with AMD 32 core whatever that you had to sell your left kidney to get. We benchmarked 4 games so we could have a wide range of tests. Red Dead Redemption 2 for its immersive graphics and open world demands, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which also has a native Linux build for comparison, Forza Horizon 5, which is excellent for testing high-speed rendering, and Cyberpunk 2077, which is infamous for its demanding system requirements. With each custom OS freshly installed and updated, let's dive into the benchmarks and see which custom Windows build reigns supreme. But now for a quick word from Flexispot, who are kind enough to send me this beautiful E7 Pro desk. So I got it up, set it all up, which wasn't as hard as I thought it would be, and boom, we're ready! It's got a beautiful mahogany finish, and it fit right in with my work aesthetic. Let me just quickly plug in my monitor, get my laptop over, and maybe a lamp just for the aesthetics, and that is looking good. Now, I just put my laptop on here, but I could have put our custom Windows PC, or myself as well. In fact, this desk can hold up to 440 pounds of weight with ease, while adjusting from a low 25 inches all the way up to 50 inches. It also stays incredibly stable while adjusting the height. Flexispot provides all kinds of standing desks and ergonomic chairs to meet your demands. Don't miss out. shop now, and leave a note saying makhirtech at checkout, and use my special discount code YTE7P50 to get an extra $50 off when you get your own E7 Pro. Special thanks to Flexispot for sponsoring this video and for this sick standing desk. So let's start off with our operating systems, and first up is Tiny10, which you kinda just have to Google and get from archive.org. Speaking of which, the downloads are hella slow because it's archive.org. Installing it was pretty much like installing regular Windows 10, no hassle. And it came with a browser. I know that doesn't sound like a big deal, but trust me, it's super helpful. On Red Dead 2, we're already seeing the highest FPS at 48. That's crazy, dog. Shadow of the Tomb Raider did an okay 54 FPS. Not bad. Forza did not launch, which is points dark for Tiny10. Definitely some kind of compatibility issue. I could try and debug it, but I want to test these systems as is. And finally, Cyberpunk did a respectable 40.7 FPS. Now compared to stock Windows 10 or 11, we have higher FPS on almost every game. However, with Linux, we've managed to beat with Red Dead 2, and that's about it. Ubuntu, and especially the gaming-focused distros, had far higher FPS. So the next logical step is Tiny11, which is a little bit more complicated. So I wanted the latest 24H2 or something Windows 11, for which you actually have to build it yourself using the script. This is a bit of a process, and I messed up a few times, but finally we have an ISO to burn to a USB. The setup is pretty much identical to Windows 11, except you don't have to do this online Microsoft account bullshit. You can create a local account. Not the hero we deserve, but the hero we needed. Also, it did not come with a browser, but I managed to install one from the store. So with Red Dead 2, we again did 48 FPS. It's a strong start. With Shadow of the Tomb Raider, we did 54 FPS, which is not bad. Forza actually did launch this time, and we did a ridiculous average of 59 FPS. And finally, Cyberpunk did an average of 40.4 FPS. Now you may notice that these benchmarks are almost identical to Tiny10, except of course Forza did launch this time, and whoo boy did it blow everything out of the water. Now Linux is still beating Windows with these two games, but Windows is beating Linux with these two games, so at least for now they're on equal footing? Now, moving on to Atlas OS. So for this, we have to reinstall Windows 11 and run their playbook. So I installed a fresh copy of Windows 11 and followed their guide. Just FYI, all you have to do is run their application and that's it. But their installation guide is hella confusing. But anyways, we're at the desktop. I'm a big fan of the UI. I personally like this subtle Windows arrow-like transparency effect. So on Red Dead 2, we did an average of 48.3 FPS. That's the highest we've seen, I think. Shadow of the Tomb Raider did 54 FPS, which is a ceiling we just can't seem to beat. Forza did an average of 28 FPS, which is back to the lows we were seeing on stock Windows, and Cyberpunk did an abysmal 25.8 FPS. Overall, looking at the numbers, I'd say it's on par with stock Windows, or maybe even a little bit lower, which is disappointing, and of course, Linux is miles ahead. Next up is AtomOS, and 100% these men were trying to scam me, bro. I opened like 3 different links with 2 different files, and they were not the operating system. Just FYI, if you ever get a RAR file with a password, you've been scammed. Also, once I did get what I assume was the correct ISO, it booted into this desktop, and the setup would not start. But then it did start when I wasn't actually clicking, so I don't know. Also, the setup UI is clearly the old Windows 7 one, so I don't know what the hell's going on. But after a long time of going through the terminal, we're finally at the desktop, which it's hella unresponsive. Sometimes the mouse just stops working. But anyways, Red Dead 2 did an abysmal 25.7 FPS. That is almost as bad as stock Windows 11. Shadow of the Tomb Raider did 33 FPS, which is the lowest I've seen. Forza did an average of 26 FPS, and Cyberpunk did an average of 25.9 FPS. I don't even think we need to compare this to the others, because it wasn't even close. This is the worst performance we've seen. Okay, now RevOS, for which I had to reinstall Windows again and run their app. However, Firefox was hella broken, because all the websites looked like that. I don't know what the hell was going on, but I installed Steam anyways, and when I was downloading games, the internet just died midway. It was fine on my other computers, which it was probably something with RevOS. But anyways, Red Dead 2 did 27 FPS, which is just awful. Shadow of the Tomb Raider just crashed, but even when it did work, we only got 34 FPS. Forza did 28 FPS, which is expected, I guess. Cyberpunk crashed when I opened it at first, but reopening it, we did 26 FPS. Again, I don't think it's worth comparing it to the others because clearly this performance is terrible. In general, using it was an awful experience and I would not recommend it. Now let's move on to Windows X Lite, or Windows 10 Lite, or whatever. This download was also hella shady. I had to click through a bunch of links, but the setup process was mostly fine. Although not only did it not come with a browser, it also did not come with the Microsoft Store. I had to install the store, then install Firefox just to download Steam. But anyways, Red Dead 2 did an average of 25 FPS, which is again awful. Shadow of the Tomb Raider crashed again, and when it did run, it did an abysmal 33 FPS. Forza was on par with the others at 28 FPS, and Cyberpunk was again super low at 25.9 FPS. You can see the comparison with stock Windows and other Linux distros, and yeah, it's just not on par. Now let's go to some of Microsoft's official editions with Windows 10 LTSC, which FYI, when people say Windows 10 LTSC, they mean Windows 10 LTSC Enterprise. But anyways, I couldn't actually find an official ISO from Microsoft, but after getting one from Google, the setup process was actually pretty simple. On the surface, it looks pretty much identical to Windows 10, but running Red Dead 2, we did an average of 48 FPS. That's a pretty strong start. Shadow of the Tomb Raider did 54 FPS, which again is pretty good. On Forza, we did 59 FPS, which is way above every other system we tested. And finally, Cyberpunk did 40.7 FPS. So the first thing to note is that the performance is almost identical to Tiny 10, which makes sense since it's based off of Windows 10 LTSC. However, Forza actually ran here, which on Tiny 10 it did not. Also, it beat stock Windows across the board. With Linux, it won with 2 games, but lost with 2. Now finally, we go to Windows 11 LTSC, which again, I could not find officially from Microsoft. But once I did, the setup process was almost identical to Windows 11, including this online account BS. But here's a little trick. You want to click on work account, then sign in options, and then click on domain join. And now it'll let you create a local account. But even after that, it immediately jumps into updates, which is just something you have to deal with official Microsoft releases. But anyways, on Red Dead 2, we did an average of 48.4 FPS. That's really good. Shadow of the Tomb Raider did 54 FPS, which is again good. Forza did 59 FPS, which is again super high. And finally, Cyberpunk did 40.5 FPS. Now again, LTSC performed almost identically to Tiny 11, but the script built Tiny 11 from stock Windows 11, not LTSC. Again, it pretty much blows stock Windows out of the water, and I'd say it's pretty neck and neck with Linux distros. Okay, so at the end of the day, which is the best for gaming? Well, I think the definitive winner is Windows 11 LTSC, and I think I'd personally pick it too. Using custom versions of Windows is fine, but you really are putting a lot of trust into something you got off the internet. The amount of scams and shady links I had to go through to install some of these operating systems was kinda scary. On top of that, a lot of these custom builds actually perform way worse than even stock Windows. Maybe with enough driver optimizations and tweaks, we could have gotten more, but I was just looking at these systems as baseline. The only custom builds that came very close to being the best were Tiny 10 and 11. These are the most popular third-party builds, and I can see why. But at the end of the day, Windows 11 LTSC is the latest Windows build. It is specifically built for long-term servicing channels, meaning it'll be supported for far longer, and it is an official Microsoft build. So how did the best Windows build compare to Linux? It depends on a game-by-game basis. Red Dead 2 and Forza Horizon 5 are far better on Windows, but Shadow of the Tomb Raider and Cyberpunk are clearly better on Linux. In our specific comparison, just because of the gap in the Forza performance, I'd have to give it to Windows 11 LTSC, but maybe if we picked a different game, we'd have a different outcome. Also, maybe because of our really old CPU, the tides have turned, and with the baller CPU, there wouldn't be a gap. Whatever is the case, for me, Windows 11 LTSC has definitively won. So let me know in the comments what you think, and subscribe!